welcome back YouTubers. We are back in the Armoury again. Now today I have got a JG Bar 10 G spec that's been brought to me. Now this is something that someone has bought very recently, along with a few upgrades that they've asked me to install. And those upgrades are in the form of the Action Army Zero trigger. So that I would feel is essential, purely to sort out the sear contact, but we'll look at that in more detail when we've got the gun open. So we've got that's a full trigger set and piston to put in, so we're going to do that one. And we've also got an upgraded Action Army spring to go in there as well. This particular one is a 170, which might be a little bit much for what we need, but for what the guy found that was available, that's what we ended up with. So we're going to see what that comes out with. We can always adjust that ever so slightly if we need to. If it is too much for the power, then we'll make adjustments as necessary. So we'll start taking this apart and have a little look at getting the new bits in. There we go. So that's that bit out. As you can see, lovely green two-tone. Right, so this obviously is all the barrel, trigger assembly and everything, all taken out. These are very, very simple to undo. We should just be able to take that one out. And whilst I'm here, I'm going to take this off as well. You've always got to take the little arm off for the hop-up chamber, otherwise you cannot get the barrel out. There we go, so we're not going to need the outer barrel for a moment, so we're going to put that up there. That is our hop chamber and barrel. We'll come back to those last. Now we're going to take the whole trigger mechanism off, because obviously we've got a whole unit there to replace it. Right, okay, so the difference between these two trigger mechanisms is, the real difference is the way these sears work. That is a 45-degree sear, and because that is at an angle, it means that with a strong spring that's likely to be putting too much stress on that as that is pulled back and as it's released, and you get what's called slam firing after a while, where that weakens and that just bounces over the top of it. Whereas the new one on here has a 90-degree sear, so it's straight up, so it holds it directly level, and that is much nicer. When you're using the gun, it's much stronger, it's much more reliable, and it means as you're bolting that back and pushing it forward, when that's holding that piston, it's holding it straight, not forcing it at an angle, meaning the return bolt pressure is a lot less than what you'd require with that, because that, the old ones, forces the piston at an angle, and it means everything's a lot tighter when you're pushing it forward, and that's why it wears so quickly. So that is the real reason we want this. And then of course it's all your zero trigger, which means the trigger pull is a lot lighter, which is much nicer, so that's really good as well. We don't have a safety on these, but nobody cares. Right, let's attach the new trigger system to the bottom of the receiver. First thing we'll do then is we're going to mount the trigger setup to the gun. So we are going to take this bit out of here. First of all, And that is going to go on there. So that's now mounted on there. That's fine. This is our new spring. Cool. That is strong. Now for the time being, we're going to hope that that spring guide is going to hold up against this. Okay, a little modification we've just done. You may have saw in that sort of previous bit of clip that, as I was trying to push it in, was getting stuck. So I've just sanded down the two plastic rings here so that that now fits in and is now smooth inside the piston so that it's not going to be getting stuck. So yeah, that annoyingly needed doing, but never mind, it was an easy thing to fix. Let's try reassembling it all now. That is now cocked. What we're going to do now is very quickly test it for compression. So I'm going to put my finger over the top and I'm going to pull the trigger, and we're not going to want to hear that piston hit the front of that cylinder until I take my finger off. Ready? And when I release, we're going to hear the noise. There you go. Now the next bit we have to do, on the trigger guard, we need to modify it. We need to cut it down. So we've got to cut it down to just above this kind of little block here. So I'm going to grab the Dremel out and just take that clean off, because that, at the minute, is too tall to sit on there. So we've got to cut it down. Right, another bit I've just modified. I've shaved down each side of this pin, because I found that when that was in there, when that was pushed in, was extremely tight. And I mean, when the gun was assembled, it was very difficult initially to get the bolt pulled that first kind of half a centimetre, because it would get stuck. So I've just shaved it all down. So it still fits snug, but it's just not too tight that it's difficult to pull the bolt back initially. So that's the second modification we've had to make to the Action Army set. First one obviously being the piston edges, these plastic rings. Second being that one. Okay, that's all back together again now. That is now a lot smoother, because it was sticking a bit earlier. I got to the point where I thought, I'm not happy with that, I need to find out why it's doing that. So that was literally shaving the top of that down, because in the standard JG Bar 10 cylinder, that turns out that on this particular one, it was a bit tight. I don't know whether that's a common thing or anyone's come across that before. If you have, check it in the comments below, it'd be interesting to find out. But yeah, other than that, that is now a lot smoother. So let's put on the trigger guard that we previously cut down. So that will now go on like so. Perfect. Right, next bit we're going to do is give it a barrel and hop. We will be changing the rubber out, upgrading to a maple leaf one, because that's going to have a larger contact pad than what's standard in there. That means for launching the heavier BBs, that is going to be so much more effective. So we're going to use that, and then we're going to make a nub to work with this hop chamber that works with that. We're also going to give the barrel a good clean, because obviously this is a brand new gun. And as with a lot of manufacturers, especially if they're shipping overseas, they tend to put a little bit of extra grease down through the barrel, just because if it's exposed to kind of the elements in containers and things like that on its way here, it's got a bit of extra protection during that time, so that the barrel is still in pristine condition when it gets here. So we'll just give all that a clean out now, so that the barrel is all fresh. interesting. It's got a VSR style rubber in it, obviously, but it still has a bridged barrel. So we need to chop that off so that we can get the Autobot to fit on there properly. But again, no problem at all. We're just going to modify this hop arm. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the two little prongs off of this and just replace it with a rubber plate, so that will interact with that hop arm much more effectively than those two little plastic things ever would with any hop. There we go, and just like that, that has now got a little rubber pad on it, so that's now going to be the hop nub. That will fit in there really well, work with that hop up rubber really well, so we just got to put it all back together. Okay, that is all reassembled, so let's give it a test fire. Okay, so that is now back together. I did have to go back into it because, as I suspected earlier, that M170 spring was a tad on the warm side for it. So that's been trimmed down a little bit and flattened off again, so it's got a new flat edge to it, and that's brought the power right down to an acceptable level for sort of sniping during skirmish use. Just for the chrono, I've got 0.48 rounds in this, so if we just send one of them through it, that's really good. That, and I've had a chance to set the hop up as well, so we know it's shooting at a decent range. That is firing 0.48 at a 320, which is bang on the upper limit for UK game sites, which is absolutely ideal. So that is another one all done and completed. I do like the JG VSR Bar 10. I bought my own one. Obviously this isn't mine, this is someone else's that I've done for them. But mine I've had since 2008. And I must admit it's been absolutely spot on, so I'm sure this one will be for an equal amount of years. So until then, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.